these are the items that you need. So you're going to need some tape, some paper. You can use cardstock, small piece of cardboard, some magnets, the copper wire. This is enamel copper wire and it is 32 gauge. And I've got a razor blade and a pair of scissors here, and that's all we need to make a speaker. Now, I've already done a couple different models, but we're going to do it again with this blue paper just to make sure it's visible and able to be seen very easily. This is from my secondary prototype, which is right here, and we're going to do this process from step 1 to the final step. So I've already laid out my template. This is going to be my base plate. These are going to be for the voice coil. We need 2 strips, one for the inner wrapping and one for the outer wrapping, which is going to hold our wires. The reason we do this is because we need to create a gap in between where the magnet rests and where the wire rests, because this needs to be able to move up and down for the vibration that creates the sound. So I'm going to start out by taking my first template. I'm using a straight edge ruler. This is a really cool ruler that I picked up at an antique store. And I'm just going to use a straight edge to make my cuts. This is for the base plate. No, I didn't cut all the way through. All right. Then we're going to do one more cut. And we're also going to be making some folds on this to make sure that it has some springiness to it when we attach the woofer to the top here and the voice coil to the bottom. So now I'm going to cut my 2 pieces for the wrapping on the voice coil. There's the first. Let's do the second. These don't have to be super exact, but we are looking for something straight, flat. And we want something that's going to be just a little bit wider than our stack of magnets here. So the next thing to have cut out is going to be our circle for the cone that we're creating for the woofer. So what I just used like a coffee lid to stencil out the circle. And once we have it cut out, once we have the stencil cut out, we need to go straight to the center circle in a straight line and cut out the center circle. And that straight line cut will allow us to overlap the 2 edges to turn this 2D circle into a 3-dimensional cone. So, elementary geometry, is that what it is? So once we have our line cut in there, we can create our woofer, which is going to direct our sound. We take our tape, put a piece of tape on the outside, and we'll put a piece of tape in here as well, just to hold the shape. And I'm a little bit OCD about it, so I like to have all the edges taped down. There's no need for that. Basically, we're just creating the shape of a cone to direct the noise once everything is hooked up to our cables and powered up. So this is going to sit on top. Looks like our cone is just a little bit I just want that to be able to rest flat. There we go. Okay. So let's see here. Let's get all the scrap paper out of the way. Okay. I think we're done with the ruler. We're done with our scraps. So the next stage is going to be to take our first, to do our first level of wrap around the magnets. So we're going to take the magnet, wrap this pretty tightly. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do need it to be close. We don't want a huge gap between the magnets. It really only needs to be as wide as this ring of paper. So once that is set, we'll go through and tape the outside on. Our magnet should slide out pretty easily. I'm also going to take a piece of tape and put it on the inside. I've noticed with these previous ones, if you don't tape the inside, it starts to get tighter and tighter as you wrap it. And then we're going to take our second coil, or second piece of wrapping. And this piece of wrapping is more important because this is what the wire is going to go around. So I'm just going to stick my magnet back in there just to make sure it's nice and tight. It's a little bit awkward, but once you have it wrapped up and taped up, you'll be all set to go. Now keep in mind, once we get, actually going to cut this thicker, there's a thicker end here. Ooh, the magnet stuck to the scissors. That was fun. All right. I ran out of cardstock, so I had to use a folder. That was just the edge of the folder. All right, now we can remove our magnets. So we have our secondary in there. We can leave that in for the time being while we do the enamel covered copper wire. Like I said before, this is 32 gauge wire, so it's very thin. It's not super substantial. You can't even hardly see it on camera, I imagine. Maybe if I put it against the blue. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. So you can see the wire is not very thick, and it doesn't need to be thick. Again, we're copying this, and this is even thinner gauge wire. This is probably 34 or 36 gauge wire. So it's even thinner than this. So when you're wrapping the wire, it's important to remember to leave about a foot on the outside. And that gives you, let's go this way. That gives you some additional play when you're connecting your auxiliary cable. Now the wiring, or the wrapping of the coil, is probably the most difficult part of this process. And the reason for that is you want it to be neat, you want it to be fairly tight around the paper, and it's just a little bit awkward to hold everything in place. But once you get comfortable with it, it goes fairly quickly. If you do a few wraps at a time, and then straighten it out, do a few wraps, and straighten it out. You want to do about 50 wraps of this wire. And once that is completed, you'll be ready to start putting all your different pieces together. Like I said, this is the most awkward and probably difficult part of the process. Sometimes you're going to have pieces that fall off the backside, but this cable, this wire is a little bit stretchy, so you're able to kind of manipulate it back to where you need it to be. You can even use a thin piece of tape to tape it down if you're having trouble keeping it on the coil. It's like that piece is just really loose right now. Yep. I'm definitely going to fast forward through all this. All right, there we go. It's hard to hold all the coils that you've done. All right, let's get situated again here. Okay, there we go. Not any super simple way to do it. It's just taking your time, paying attention to what you're doing, and trying to hold everything together at the same time, which isn't as easy as it sounds. And 50 coils is quite a bit. So it's easy to do like 2 or 3 at a time, tighten it down, straighten it out. But once we get to about 50, we'll tape both sides down. We'll straighten everything out and tape it down. And make sure that everything is nice and neat. And then we can start putting all the pieces together. It's actually, the more cable you get on there, the easier it gets, which is a little odd, but you don't need a whole lot. I'm using a taller stack of magnets, so I feel like the more coils we have, the stronger interaction we can get with that magnetic field. And if you use 30 gauge wire, this is a good setup for 30 gauge wire. The 32 is a little bit thin. It works, it's just not super loud. On my previous attempt at this, I got probably 5% volume compared to like when you're using your phone. If you have your volume set at like the lowest setting, that's really what it sounds like. Oh, I just lost a few coils there. All right, I think we're going to do 2 more wraps. Then we're going to tape it down. Try to straighten everything out. And I don't know if I mentioned, the magnets that we're using are neodymium magnets, which are stronger than ferrite magnets. And ferrite magnets are very common in lower end speakers, like computer speakers, especially really cheap computer speakers. Neodymium is a higher quality magnet that works much better. It provides a stronger magnetic field, and it works much better and is used in higher end speakers. So whenever you're reading specifications and you see neodymium, that's definitely a higher quality product. So now that we've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and tape down my wires just so we don't lose the progress that we've already made. And then straighten everything out. All right, so we've got our free end, and then we'll just go ahead and cut this at about 12 inches. So now we've got our 2 connecting enamel covered copper cables. We'll just match these, and we'll go about 1 inch longer on the other one. Okay, so now we can set our copper cable aside. We're going to double check that this is still working. Yep. Now we can go ahead, now that we've done our wire loops, we can take out that inner piece. And as you can see, there's a gap which makes it loose, which makes the magnet loose. This is going to allow this now attached. Oh, and this is important. Okay, so the inside of this paper loop now has to be taped down. so it doesn't tighten up and create friction on the magnet. The piece is a bit too big. Get a smaller piece of tape, and I'm going to tape down the inside of the paper so it doesn't move. Perfect. All right, that is beautiful. I hope you could see all that very simply. So we can see this isn't a perfect loop. The nicer and neater that you do it, the better it looks, I guess. I don't know if it makes that much of a difference. This could just be raw and still work just fine. So you can see the width is just a little bit more on our magnets than on our wires. So let's go ahead and create our stand for the woofer. Now I didn't create the dotted lines on here because first I want to see what our height is. Our height on this should be a little bit taller than the magnets themselves. And this is going to sit on the stand like this with this taped underneath. So we want, so I'm just looking at how tall this needs to be. We're going to fold this in half to start with. That'll be tall enough, and then we'll fold it in half again. Like so. So you can see we've got a nice spring there. So we're going to do the same thing on this side, fold it in half. Fold it in half. And then fold it in half again. Oh, I did it that. Yeah, that's right. So you can see once we tape this down on the inside here, we'll be able to adjust a little bit and we'll have some flexibility for the vibration. So I'm just going to take a piece of tape, and on the outside of our voice coil, we'll put a piece of tape on each side. Like so. And then we'll tape it down. We'll try to center it here. Make sure it's still nice and circular. And we'll tape it down in the center. And I like to test as I go along. And when I turn it over, the magnet should fall right out. Yep. Perfect. So now that that is attached, we can go ahead and attach this to our base. And it's okay to attach this to the base now because the flexibility allows us to pull up on it to insert the magnet where we need the magnet when we're ready for the magnet to go inside. Now you can mount the magnet onto the bottom base plate if you choose, but there's no need to do that in case you're testing different magnets, or you want to see how one magnet works against 5 magnets or different size magnets, different diameter magnets. So if you allow yourself some flexibility, you can just pull this up and put the magnet right in there. Now that looks very good. It's exactly what we want. I'm going to pull it up. Oops, it was hard to do at an angle. I'm going to pull it up, and the magnet will fit right in there. Now the last step is we're going to take our cone. And this is actually pretty easy. It's a lot easier. You don't take a piece of tape, stick it across the middle so that you get a little bit of stick on that side. We're going to find our center. I don't think that's the center. Just push into the magnet, and there you are. So now, I'm going to squeeze this so the magnet doesn't fall. So now you can see we've got our magnets in there, our voice coil on top, and then we have our speaker. So now there's only one more step, and that is connecting the auxiliary cable. Now you'll notice this has 3 different cables inside of it. It's got a white, a red, and a black. Your black cable is the ground cable, and we will be connecting one of the red or white, which is left and right channel. We're going to connect one of the channels. So if you use both, it's stereo, but this is mono. So we're going to use one channel and our ground to connect to our wires. However, as you'll remember, these are enameled covered copper wires. So we need to get rid of the enamel. I'm going to use a lighter to do that. However, you can also use sandpaper. Just be careful when using a lighter when you burn the enamel off, not to inhale any. So we're going to take a lighter and we're going to burn off probably an inch or 2 of the enamel. You can see the smoke come up as it burns off. And then that copper wire will turn red. It doesn't take much heat to burn this enamel off. It's actually pretty simple. And once that's done and cooled off, it cools off really quickly. Again, we're going to take our ground, which is our black, and connect that first. You can use alligator clips for this process, or you can just twist it like I'm going to do. Alligator clips are probably, you can also use spring clips, where you spring both sides, you spring each side, but this works just as well. It's not a super solid connection, which I actually like, because this is just, you know, a mock-up, but now we're going to take our other side and we're going to connect it to the red, to the right channel. And just twist it. And then we plug this into our source, which in this case is going to be the phone that I'm using to make this video, and then test it out. It's all set to go. So after quite trial and error trying to get the microphone to be able to pick up the speaker, I've had to connect our speaker to the computer. And as you can see, it seems to think that I'm pressing play and pause quite a bit, over and over again. However, if I put the microphone up to the speaker, you can hear that it is making noise. So it is working, but I'm going to... It does pick up music. I just highly recommend that you use an auxiliary port instead of a USB cable that connects directly to it.